Thanks for tuning in. Scott Ellis is with us. He represents the bar owners in Michigan fighting a minimum wage battle. New polling data in the Michigan presidential race and the U.S. Senate contest. Around the OTR table, Craig Mauger, Zoe Clark, and Colin Jackson sitting with us as we get the inside out, off the record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to Off the Record. New polling data.
Every week we get new polling data.
Well, listen, people don't like it when we cover the horse race, but I want to say this. We use the horse race numbers to actually get into issues. So let's start with you. Your poll, I thought the lead was Ms. Harris got no bounce out of the convention.
I think that was significant. We led with other angles that this is essentially a toss-up, and it's going to be a toss-up, it looks like, for the next 2 months. No one's pulling away here. There was some, consideration among Democrats that they would get a new candidate, and this new candidate, Kamala Harris, would eventually pull away from Donald Trump. There are no signs of that happening right now. She was in our last poll in July. She was slightly ahead by less than 1 percentage point. Now he's ahead by 1 percentage point. All of that means they're essentially tied under the rules of how polling works and the margin of error. We don't want to get into all of that, but this is a tied race. Every little move is going to change and potentially alter the outcome of this.
Yeah, this is a race, like we like to say, by the inches, not yards anymore. It's, more reasons why we saw Kamala Harris in Michigan on Monday, Joe Biden in Ann Arbor Friday. We're going to continue to see Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Walz. I mean, every single person is going to start needing to pay, residency tax here in Michigan, and it is because it is so close. And we should say, swing states are showing this too. New polling this week in Pennsylvania, 47-47. So it is close.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think what we saw back in, I believe, at the July polling, we saw that Trump didn't get a boost from his assassination attempt. I think what we're seeing now with Harris coming out of the convention, not seeing that same boost, I think that's also interesting. And it just goes to show how calcified people really are in their beliefs and their political mindsets, and that kind of that squishy middle, the independent voters, the ones who are the swing voters, it's a lot fewer and far between than in past years and in past races. And again, like you said, it's a game of inches, not feet, not yards. And you hear that about football all the time. We're back to football season, but I think it's apt as well for politics.
So why is it tied?
I think it's tied because we're an extremely divided state. And no one in this presidential race, unlike Governor Whitmer 2 years ago in the governor's race, no one has been able to reach across or even reach to the middle and figure out how to talk to those people. I set out one of my story ideas for the week about the polling was, I'm going to talk to those undecided voters and see where they're at in this. And it wasn't that interesting of a story once I started looking into it, because there aren't that many of them. Yeah. And the ones that are there are basically like, I hate both of these candidates. And that's not that fun of a story.
What we call the sort of double haters, right? Which we used to talk about as sort of the Trump-Biden, but it really just seems it's sort of like a plague on both their houses for some of these.
They hate the system.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they hate the system. They hate where the parties are. They liked Robert Kennedy a little bit, and now he's part of the system because he's endorsing Donald Trump. Yeah. They don't know where to go. Yeah. I don't see how one of these candidates convinces them.
Back to this polling and independence, though, what's really interesting in your Detroit News poll is, you guys also looked at the Roger Slotkin race, right? Where Slotkin has really pulled ahead. If you look at these polls.
She has a real lead.
She has a real lead. But this is what's interesting about this is when you look at independents, her favorables among independents are higher than Kamala Harris's are among these groups. And I thought that was really, really interesting.
Let's go back and look at who these people are. The New York Times had a great piece on identifying 18% of the uncommitted. First of all, 13% are black, 7% Hispanic, 58% white. No surprise there. But here's the numbers. Under the age, younger voters, male, 51%, no college, 63%. These are bad numbers for Democrats.
I think there's a lot in these numbers that should cause them pause. And I'm sure you've been doing this too, and everyone at this table. I was talking to some of the Michigan Democrats. They're extremely confident.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the confidence that they're speaking and what these numbers show. The numbers show a pure toss-up, and the Democrats just believe they're going to win this thing.
But they're still living off the high of getting rid of Joe Biden.
I think that's part of it. I think they're living off the high of 2022, 2020, 2018.
And the candidate, has warned everybody, even if we're ahead in the polls, don't remember Hillary Clinton. How far advanced was she in Michigan? She was going to win Michigan.
She's going to win the whole thing.
The thing about Michigan is that when there is a high turnout election, and this has been proven time and time again, if both sides turn out, there are usually more Democrats here than there are Republicans, and Democrats win. That's a major difference from 2016. Democrats didn't turn out. It looks like they're excited to vote this year.
Well, Zuba says he has the enthusiasm meter.
Yes, we love talking to Rich Zuba about his enthusiasm meter.
And he thinks the Democrats are pinning the needle.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to some extent that's true, but I think a lot of that has to do with what we were talking about, that there was just such enthusiasm among Democrats when Joe Biden decided to step down, that there was this sort of breath of, fresh air. And, Democrats will not all say it on the record, but off the record, lawmakers, down ballot folks are like, whew. So I think some of that enthusiasm is just for the change of course, rather than necessarily, this sense that like, oh, maybe there's a possibility we can win.
All right, I was just to add to that, though, I think what Harris gets you is back in the race. I think when Biden was the top of the ticket,
we got a chance now.
Yeah, you're saying we've got a chance.
Yeah, that's the joy that you're seeing. That's the enthusiasm. It's just getting back in the race from being way out on the sidelines and feeling behind.
Yeah, going back to the football metaphor, right? It's like when the game's a little closer, you suddenly start paying more attention.
And now we're happy to be tied. Now the Democrats are happy to be tied. Yeah. I think that's what you're seeing
from them. Bringing the young people back into the fold was an important thing, because they were clearly sitting in our hands with Mr. Biden. Or am I reading that wrong?
No, I think that's true. And I think that, like Colin said, this is a lifeline to Democrats. They have a chance to win Michigan. Now, they can't misread the chance they have to win in terms of this idea that, hey, we're going to have a blue wave. There are no signs of a blue wave in the current polling that we're seeing. Yes, Alyssa Slotkin is beating Mike Rogers substantially, but I think that speaks to the fact that Donald Trump is the pivot point of all of this. When Donald Trump is on the ballot, Michigan looks different from when he's not on the ballot. There are voters in this state that Donald Trump speaks to that no other candidate, even someone trying to do a Donald Trump impersonation, can speak to. When Donald Trump is on there, there's a different turnout operation. Just look at your mailbox right now for a lot of people in Michigan. You're getting tons of mailers from the Michigan Republican Party that's flowing through the Trump campaign. They actually have an operation going on that they did not have in 2022.
Slotkin, her numbers, that is beyond the margin of error. But if she can do this, why can't Ms. Harris?
Well, that's what's so interesting, right, when you're actually looking at the poll from the Detroit News, again, is this idea that Slotkin seems to be shoring up independents in a way that Kamala Harris just has not been able to do yet. And I think that's suddenly where you're going to have to see folks like Tim Walz coming in and trying to work on some of the voters, labor voters who, used to just sort of steadfastly go to Democrats. And then some of that was the shock in 2016, going to Trump, then going to Biden, back to Biden in 2020. And we got to see what's going to happen now in 2024.
So why does Mr. Trump go to Potterville?
Because he needs people to vote for him. It's the same thing Craig was saying. We got to shore up the vote.
Potterville.
Because there's voters in Potterville. Small town America.
We were saying the same thing in 2016 when he went to Diamondale.
Yeah,
I remember sitting around this table and we all went, why is he going to Diamondale?
It didn't hurt that was a viral moment from the campaign where clips got played on CNN and network and cable news when he talked to black voters and said, vote for me, what do you have to lose?
Yeah.
That was,
Two sides of that coin. I mean, let's not read too much into the stops he's making right now, because he's going to make a dozen more stops here and he's going to be all over the place by the time this is over. Number two, he's trying to reach those voters who may or may not vote in every election. That's what his whole campaign is about right now. The people who are not dedicated voters. How do they get those occasionally Republicans, the evangelicals, hunters? Those are the people, when I'm talking to people within the Republican Party, they say that's who we're targeting right now. Those people that don't always vote, how do we get them to turn out?
All right, so why does Mr. Kennedy want to get back on the ballot?
No, he doesn't want.
Yes.
He wants to get off the ballot.
Yeah.
He is like, I am not running. Do not vote for me. Don't even think about it. And some judges here in Michigan this week are like, oh no, you're on the ballot, buddy. He wants to get off the ballot because he's worried it's going to siphon votes away from the former President Donald Trump, who Kennedy endorsed
You mean
a
to
few
tell
weeks
me
ago.
some people will vote on Election Day and his name's on the ballot and they won't know he's off the ballot?
Shocker.
You think
Crazy.
that's a chance?
There are people that won't know he's off the ballot,
Yeah.
and there are people that will vote for him as a protest vote against
You
the
got
two
10%
candidates.
in some of the polls.
Yeah, there are a lot of. I mean, this issue alone, could have a major impact on the
could
outcome.
decide the election.
It could. Any of these things could decide the election. That's how
Any
close the
minor
race
factor.
is.
Yeah.
But I want to make a point on this that I think is forgotten. People will say on social media, he wants off the ballot. Why won't they let him off the ballot? Well, there's something called the Natural Law Party. Robert F. Kennedy went to them and said, I want to be your nominee. And they made some agreement. You can be our nominee. You get on the
He
ballot.
was completely craven, we should say, about this.
Yeah, and now should he be able to turn around and tell this party, I no longer want to represent you on the ballot, you get kicked off the ballot, and all of this determines whether the Natural Law Party gets ballot access going forward. So this is about more than the presidential race. This is about political parties and what their ability and the legality around this is to be on the ballot into the future.
And the implications, because think about the gamesmanship that you could then see. You could see candidates suddenly stepping up, these small conventions, and then waiting to the very last minute, dropping out and screwing,
Well,
campaigns
what about
over.
Cornel West? Okay.
He gathered signatures, so it's different.
He's an independent, so there's
Brewer wants to take him off the ballot.
That's true. That's true. It's a little bit different because that's a legal battle over whether he filed the paperwork correctly, and he is not representing a larger group of people on the ballot. He's representing someone who signed a petition for him particularly.
Ironically enough, I believe in other states, Cornel West may be on the natural law candidate in other states
In other
as well.
states, but here he's an independent. He got the petition.
So the Democrats obviously are afraid that he takes votes away from Ms. Harris. Is that what this is all about?
It's a game of inches.
This is the
You can
Brewers
do-
not just arguing this for the sake of making an argument.
And there are Republican-linked people arguing to keep him on the ballot.
as well as Jill Stein.
Yeah, and
right?
there is going to be a partisan lens to this Robert F. Kennedy issue that we're now playing out, and that tells you how close this race is. That everyone is spending lots of money, hiring the best lawyers they can to fight over this stuff.
Because everybody remembers 2016 when
Yep.
the Stein campaign and others got enough votes to make up the difference between Hillary and Trump.
And 2000 with Ralph Nader and Al Gore,
Yeah. Yes, it is a significant fact because the average person at home just looks at this. This is all very confusing, but this is part of the jigsaw puzzle which is going on here in Michigan.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think learning from past elections, the elections you've mentioned, there's going to be over the next 2 months a massive fight over every minor election rule of this race. And it's all going to point to the fact that there's a lot of people that think this is going to come down to potentially a few thousand votes in Michigan, and they're all trying to position themselves so they have the best argument to win whatever plays out after this election.
It goes back to this is about inches, not yards.
Stay tuned. All right, let's call in our guest and talk about the minimum wage. So belly up to the bar there, kid. Thanks for doing Off the Record. So let's cut to the chase. Do you have any assurances, implied or otherwise, that the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, or the Governor will give you the time of day to change what's going on?
Man, you start off right away, don't you? That's why I love
chase.
it. I have no assurances, none whatsoever.
None. Have you asked for them?
Absolutely. But
And you've gotten a Zippo.
No, what I've gotten actually is we definitely want to talk, and we're open to listening, and they have been. We've been working this for several years. The courts have ruled. Okay, they have ruled, and we have to accept that. And justice is what it is, and I believe in the court system. Do I think that it was right or wrong? That's a different story, but we accept it. And we have been talking, and our whole position is the tipped credit is what everybody calls it, but the ability not to put all of that instant payroll onto the back of the small business. So the legislature has been very open.
So they are willing, and are they talking to you?
Yeah, we've had a ton of meetings.
And is a compromise emerging?
I don't know.
What's your gut tell you?
My gut is I think people do the right thing. I think the more they're
That also
educated.
tells you they're going to run the clock on you.
Well, we know there's a clock ticking, right? And we know that they're going to be in session one day this month, and on the House side, and that at least on the books right now, and that December, right, as you guys were talking a few minutes ago, everything's about the election right now, right?
Zoe.
The focus is on the election.
I mean, so if you're a betting man, whether it be money or, I don't know, beverage of someone's choice, does this end up happening then in lame duck?
If I had to bet that if anything is going to happen, I have to make sure there's no assurances. I think it will be later in the year. Yes, I do. I think it'll be after the election. I think it's not because of the topic; it's because they are focused. When I sat here listening to you guys, and the numbers are very tight, and you have a House that's a 1-seat majority, and there's a lot on the line here, everywhere. So I think that right now it's like, look, we have one session day. I think there's some things they need to get done. I think school safety could be something that needs to get done before the session is over, before the election, and then we can sit down and focus on something like this.
What do you I sit back and look at all of this, and one of the thoughts that keeps coming to my mind is the Democrats have the majorities. They have a large progressive contingent in both caucuses. What are the chances that they actually do anything on this tipped wage, despite those facts?
I think even progressives get it. You got to remember, a lot of us all started out in the hospitality industry, right? Including, legislators and staffers who still some work in the hospitality industry because they like the flexibility of the hours, they like the tips, they like the cash they can bring in, right? There's a lot to it. A lot of single parents who work 2-3 days a week, make good money on those tips, and I'm home with my kids. I'm at my kid's soccer game, and so I think we're not trying to gut anything. It's not just, it's also the time off. We are trying to make something that's workable. We lost in the courts. It's the system the way it is. I think now, if you get into ballot proposals, which I'd love you guys to talk about someday, I could sit and listen to you guys talk about that all day. People don't realize what they're signing. And I think it's what looks good on paper, sounds good standing on the street corner. And then when you flesh it out, when it comes to statute, there's some things that need to be clean, and those fiscal impacts are not seen until it's there. And I think that's where they're looking at. And so to answer your question, of course, I think people are open-minded to listening regardless.
Is in your conversations, just one follow-up to this, have they said to you, we're not touching the minimum wage, and the only thing we're willing to talk about is the tipped wage?
Yes. So I think, and we know what, we're not asking to change minimum wage.
No,
I'll tell you that right now.
In these meetings,
and we're not. No. I want to make sure we're very clear on that. We are not. We are fine with the minimum wage going. We just don't want. I don't think what people understand is servers make whatever the minimum wage is, regardless. If they don't make it in tips, the business has to make it up. Okay. So we can use 62% of the tip to get them to that wage, right? So no matter what, if it goes to $15, they're making $15 and those tips on top of that. Anything above us. I think that's a lot of times where the public, when they sign this, didn't realize they are actually not. They're not making $3-something an hour.
I think people are talking. You hear a lot about this ballot proposal, especially on the side of those folks that wanted to keep how it was. They make it the case that this would dramatically change the tipping system in Michigan. That waiters and bartenders would make less money. Realistically, do you see the tipping system going away though? Especially now when kind of every time you go to the store, it seems like you're getting the screen turned around for a tip.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I do think the general public does have, especially since COVID, when we all felt guilty, and I'm glad we did, because those servers deserve it in other industries, that now that it's just everything spins. I mean, you go to a coffee shop and maybe they're not actually waiting tables, and are they really making tip minimum wage, or are they getting the regular minimum wage? Is that on top of it, right? I see that the dilemma, and so the public does go like, God, everything's a tip. But if you talk to the servers in the industry, they want those tips. They want to have, it's a competitive position, right? I could be a good server, make good money. And so I think the other thing you're going to see, and I could give you stats, 89% of our members surveyed said they'll raise prices instantly. They have no choice. I think what people forget too is when you raise and make everything go onto the business, their payroll income tax, or their payroll tax goes up, their work comp goes up, all those payroll liabilities instantly double and triple.
Well, you have played the sky is falling card. You have predicted there would be bars closing left and right.
Yep. Yes, and so
hyperbole.
No. In fact, I have.
Why wouldn't you say that?
It's true though. But here's the thing. So I talk to my members, and there's a place in northern Michigan or north of Lansing here in St. John's that will tell you right now, I will instantly have to cover $300,000. I don't have that net. So I will lay off more than half my staff, and I will have you come up to the bar to order your food, and you'll walk up and get it. We'll be getting rid of hospitality and services, what this industry is about. And then I'll give you an example. You guys all know I own a distillery here in Lansing. I would have one person working. I couldn't afford it. My margins weren't there. On the tasting room alone, we're not there. And that's, believe me, I'm not making a ton of money. I'm not afraid to admit
Going back just to the tipped wage, again, what we're just trying to keep track of here. Have other states done what could happen in Michigan, and what has the outcome been?
So 5 have done it recently. Minnesota has never had one. I didn't find that out. They haven't had one in like 50 years. But their prices are extremely high. California have done it, and cities have done it. And you've seen bars and people move out of there. So we have 5 states that don't have a tipped wage, or that have done this, and then you have D.C. And I was in D.C. not too long ago for work, and talked to a server. She said, I will not come to D.C. anymore to work. I'll just go work in Alexandria. I don't want to come down here anymore because the tips are where I make my money and my flexibility of my schedule. If not, I'll go to a regular office job, or I'll go to another job out of this industry, because this industry is not an easy industry. People are mean. And so it's a tough industry to work in, and to do that, you want that incentive-based reward. We talk to servers on a regular basis, and what we're asking we're not asking to change the wage. We're asking not to put it 100% back on the backs of the business, and that's what you'd be doing overnight.
So who are you fighting? Who is your major opponent?
Obviously, One Fair Wage, who's not out of Michigan, who funded this with over $1 million for signatures, and they're not even in Michigan. Their director lives in Berkeley, California. Hey, people have their beliefs and whatever, but at the same time,
who are they?
They're a mix. I don't know. I know Jane Fonda funds a lot to One Fair Wage. I don't know who they actually are, but again, I'd love to hear you guys sit and talk about ballot proposals and how they work, because it's a funding of signatures, and you've noticed in the last few years how those have been challenged and things have been found.
Let's talk about that.
Oh, sure.
I want to talk about that. Where were you? No, in 2018, where were you on that? Where was your association on the legislature doing what they did to adopt and amend this?
I can honestly say we were not in the room.
But
we
did you
not
say,
oppose
hey,
it.
you should adopt this?
No, our organization did not.
Did you tell them not to?
I didn't know about it.
You didn't know about it?
I did not know that this was the eventual plan. I do know that we talk to them on a regular basis saying, hey, do something and adopt, and I did not know about a change. And I'll be honest, even if I did, I would say right now, I felt it was okay to do. I know the Supreme Court ruled, and we'll accept that. We don't always agree whether it's right or wrong, right? We have our opinion that I think when we read this and you look at it now, it looks like you can adopt an amendment within the same time frame or same legislature, but now they're saying no.
Well, before adopt and amend, before this 2018, there was Frank Kelly as Attorney General for years before that had already said it was not okay,
right.
And then it changed. So, a little bit of this is, and I'm going to use the public television appropriate, screw around and find out, right?
Sure,
sure. So now here's the outcome.
It is, and again, like I said, our organization, who I can speak for, right? I can't speak for other organizations, and we at that time, we're there and we're crying the same cries we are now. Please don't put this on us. And we spent money to fight the ballot, and we just didn't have enough, right? I'm not gonna lie, there's just not enough out there to do that.
Are your people upset enough to take this out on people running for the legislature in the House right now?
Oh yeah.
Why did you pause?
Because I had to think about, I had to think before I answered. I had to think, but I know businesses and Democrat and Republican business owners. This has nothing to do with party. And in defense of the current sitting legislature, they didn't do this. Right? They're now having to clean up the mess. And so I know of Democratic-owned, Republican-owned, of course, businesses that are blowing up phones of legislators saying, you don't realize this impact. And I want to tell you real quick, we don't want to gut. Do not want to gut.
So how could they possibly sit on this till lame duck? They could, their goose could be cooked.
You know what? You guys are the pundits on that stuff. That's a good question.
Well, that's what you're hoping.
Why aren't you? Are you all planning to pressure individual members? Like a Jamie Churches in Downriver. Could you see your guys' groups going to her district, or did someone ask you not to do that?
No. Actually, what it is this is grassroots. We want true constituents to do their things. Okay, and so there have been a series of events around the state. There's another one coming up here in Lansing. This has to be a grassroots, true. This legislature is very good at listening to their constituents, more so than lobbyists and more so than associations. They'll listen, but it hits home with this current legislature when your constituents speak. And you know what? That's the way it should be, right?
So you're not going to hit individual members to pressure them?
We are letting the constituents and our members know we're educating all the legislators on our side, not on our side, whatever. We're meeting with absolute opponents in educating, and we're just showing the impact that this will have.
But with that in mind, though, how badly do the optics play into this, though, and how much of a challenge do the optics present of a Democratic-led legislature, the first Democratic trifecta in forever, now talking about potentially lowering people's wages?
Well, they're not going to lower wages, so that's kind of the misnomer, right? Again, the minimum wage is going to go up regardless. We're
Right,
asking to keep the
lowering
tip credit.
business's responsibility.
No, it's
for
not
it.
lowering. It's actually keeping. It's still going to increase on us. So that, and I'm glad you're asking that. So really, if you think right now, we can use 62% of the tip to make them get to whatever the state minimum wage is. That's all it is. So instead of putting it 100% on the back of the business now to pay, let's say $15 an hour, it's going to be you can use that 62% of the tip. They will still they'll make the same or more. That's where I think it's confusing. Is they are going to make more money. The legislature does something here. All they're doing is not putting it 100% on it.
What did you think of the governor going back to the Supremes and saying, "Give us some clarity here"?
It's funny. I read that article this morning and then Brewers talking about it, and it was in it. I think they're just looking for clarity. I mean, it was very confusing. And you guys can answer this better. Normally,
So it
when
wasn't
a Supreme
dodge?
No, not at all. No, in fact, I
Wait
think
a minute,
it's
the
true.
court ruled. The court rules through its opinion.
Let me ask you this: so when a Supreme Court rules on a law that it's invalid, that law remains on the books until it's statutorily removed or changed. Correct? Well, this one they said, okay, you got to go back to what you adopted, but do A, B, C, D, and go on. And that's like, wait a minute, how do you get that into statute? How do you implement
So
that?
her request was a legitimate request.
100%. I think all of us in the whole industry on all sides were like, how exactly this is going to work? When I saw that this morning, I'm like, this is a legitimate. I want to get it right because they don't want another lawsuit.
We're low on time, but just a quick question, percentage. What are the percent chances that they change the sick leave policy, do you think? Because this is very complex.
The sick leave, I don't want to say percentage, I'm not good at that. But I am going to say, I think it's a good opportunity that they're going to make it where it's workable.
It's very tough.
It's not workable.
Yeah.
And what we're asking for in the sick, I couldn't even get it, it's a whole other show. The fact that we would like to see really up front is the time up front, where they get it right away, they use it with some rules. Call us, let us know. Don't use it in 1 minute increments. That's all.
Quickly, finally, how many bars did you lose during COVID?
Oh, hundreds. And real quick, this will be worse because there's no federal bailouts and no state bailouts.
Thank you, sir. It's good to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Keep us posted, all right?
I will. I appreciate being here.
All right, thanks to our great panel.
Yes.
See you all next week for more of this little program called Off the Record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan Public Television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.